All right. Looks like we are back for another exciting Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign dev stream. Really glad to have you guys on here. I know that we're just loading up here, so I'd like to give a couple seconds for everyone to jump in the chat and make sure everyone can hear me. So once I see some confirmations that the chat's playing and everyone can hear me, we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, look, I see a hi, so I think we're good to go. Everyone, welcome to the next dev stream. This is dev stream number 3. We're really excited to have you all here. It's going to be a lot of fun today. We have a lot of cool stuff to talk about. We're talking all about the royal court today. I am excited to have my guest Veso with me today. Hey, Veso, how you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. Nice to be here again.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. And this is going to be a full Brad and Veso show today. It's only me and you today. So I hope you guys are going to get settled in for some fun conversation with Veso and I. So you were telling me a little bit earlier, I know that you're out in Bulgaria. It's snowing right now out where you are? You have a little bit of snow on the ground?
Yeah, finally we have something that looks like a winter, a real one, with plenty of snow, and it's cold. Last week it was 15 degrees Celsius, so it was quite unusual for February, but now looks proper.
Yeah. I never get to. I live in a very warm place, so I never get to experience the snow and the cold unless I travel. So yeah, we don't. Yeah, someone in the chat as well. Username Pawn is saying they don't get snow either. So it's just the way it goes sometimes. I actually don't think it's a bad thing to live in a place without snow personally. I mean, I like going to visit snow. I think visiting snow is great, but I've always heard the horror stories of having to shovel your car out of the snow whenever it's too deep and you have to go to work or whatever. And to me, I don't I'm not about wanting to shovel my car out. Do you have to do that when you go to work in the morning sometimes?
Yeah, and the kids go to school, so sometimes it happens 6:30, 7 a.m. So it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, we're really excited about having Veso on. We're going to be talking about the royal court, but I had a special promise that I committed to the chat. I'm going to see whoever can remember what I promised everyone for the very first part of this dev stream. If anyone can recall maybe something I missed the last time and something I'm supposed to show this time. Does anyone remember what this is? Yes, there we go. Jorka remembers the flying fish. I'm going to be really curious if we think this is a little more anticlimactic than it actually is. It's a very small bug and it's a very short video, but we're gonna make it happen anyways. So if my handy dandy companion behind the scenes can go ahead and cue it up, we are finally going to show, and a little bit of context from everyone. Back about the first dev diary, and then first dev stream, I should say. Veso was commenting about this bug that had come up where we have these fish that jump over the water, like a little just kind of environmental set pieces, right? Veso, is that how you describe them?
Yeah, well, it's one of those things that in-house it became almost legendary. I remember Alex coming to just going around the office and asking everybody, guys, do you know something about the fish that flies very high? And what's the idea about this fish and all that stuff? Nobody believed him until he saw it. But it happens once in a blue moon, exactly.
Oh, man. So
I think it's fixed now, but yeah.
Wow, it's one of those bugs we never fix. Every once in a blue moon, just a fish flies into the top of the screen.
But you can imagine at 10 o'clock or at least some late hour after a busy day, you're already tired, and then you see this thing, and then you think you are getting crazy, maybe.
Oh, man. Well, without going too wild here, with the preamble, let's go ahead and bring on the video of the flying fish. So it's a short little clip, but you can at least see this idea of this bug. It'd be fun to show. So go ahead, Alex, go ahead and put it on there. And there you go. It's a flying fish. Hooray! We've now seen the fish. Like I said, it's really short. But you can see it's a giant, massive fish flying into the sky. I imagine when you're scrolling around the map and actually looking at different things, and you see this massive, almost like the goldfish, but white, like flying across the screen. It's quite interesting. We'll show it one more time. Go ahead and put it up one more time just to, show it again. We'll show it one more time. Yeah, someone said they blinked and missed it. It's all good. Top right corner, flying fish. Does that fish give additional gold for a town? Oh man, we can have like a little mini game where if you ever see the flying fish and you can click on it, you actually can get like a bonus or something, almost like a pseudo fish based quick time event. I don't know. Well, today, Vesto, we're talking about the royal court and going through different aspects of this. I know you talked a little bit about this during the initial announcement of the game. We kind of did a little bit of preamble about the royal court was and why it was important. But before we get into the dev diary itself, tell us a little bit about like the history of this idea of this royal court. Like this was in the first game. It's now in this game. I know there's a little bit in the dev diary about this being a little bit like almost like King Arthur fantasy. Where did you get the idea of doing the royal court in the first place? Where did that come from?
Well, probably there are more than one influences here. But back then, 15 years ago, we had in mind that the game will definitely have several larger feature sets like religion and espionage warfare, and suddenly I don't remember how exactly that happened, but suddenly we said, okay, why we don't front end put some characters as an interface to these feature sets instead of some windowses and stuff like that. So it became very natural the moment the idea emerged. I don't even remember whose idea that was. Well, definitely somebody from the team, but at some point everything seemed so logical. Like, also it limits your interaction with the world in some way. So it has so many positive sides, this roll code thingy. So we decided we get in love with it, basically.
Awesome. I know it's definitely, I think, a unique aspect of the Knights of Honor franchise, and something that I noticed the very first time I played Knights of Honor 1, and of course it had to be there for Knights of Honor 2. It's required.
Yeah.
So to start, I know in the dev diary, now we're going to go into some of the dev diary stuff. And if you haven't read the dev diary, I really encourage you to check it out. We post them before every dev stream, so you can find them on community.knightsofhonor.com. Read Dev Diary 3, The Royal Court Part 1. There's a lot to share about the Royal Court, a lot of different aspects to it, and we're going to be diving into different elements of the Royal Court over the course of this whole adventure together as we're explaining different parts of the features. So to start, you had this idea, or there was this thing in the Dev Diary that kind of talked about deck building, and I find that an interesting phrase to use because we're not making a card game. It's not like you're not building a deck of cards. It's not like you're playing one of the Magic or something like that. So why do we use that phrase, deck building? What is it about the royal court feature that makes it feel like that?
Well, one is definitely the limited space you have and the possible combinations you can make, and those combining different classes into or within this limited space provides for different play styles and so on and so on. But there is one very special thing here to mention. When you think about decks and card games, usually it comes up with I get a card and I play it, and it's off my hand, and it's not in my hand anymore. Right. In the old game, we did a lot of things to be sure that those people in the roll calls, they every now and then they are gone. There are many different ways that could happen. For example, your marshal can become a king or can be killed or captured or whatnot, and your cleric can become a pope. There were ways for those guys to get out of the court, so you refresh them, get new ones, which comes with its own special things attached. But yeah, there is something like deck.
Yeah, and so this was something that was in the first game. It's like deck building part of it, right?
For example, if you don't have strong marshals, you probably would consider different playstyle in this moment. So, no.
Yeah, I think the idea of being able to kind of lay out your own royal court really was a big part of that too for me, because you had this. I remember one of my favorite. I still haven't tried this yet in one of our progress builds. I don't know how it would work with the current non-existent balance and whatnot, but the idea of playing like a game of all spies
Mm,
or all merchants, like trying these extreme cases where you're just overloading on a certain class to really leverage their feature set in
mm,
unique ways. It really does allow you to kind of take the role court that matches your play style and what you want to do and try
mm,
different builds, so to speak.
mm. Yeah, it's possible. I don't wouldn't advise somebody to play only with merchants or only with spies, but the game allows to for the people to have their own fun every now and then. I do it in the
Right.
old game sometimes,
Yeah.
just crazy stuff, just to entertain myself.
Right. Well, there was one big change, I think, from, and we talked. I'm jumping a little bit ahead on the stream, but or on the topics, but we talked about the ability for non-marshals potentially to lead armies. Because one limitation in Knights of Honor 1 is that
Mhm.
only marshals could lead armies in your king, I guess. So if you had like an all spy or all merchant role court, you would not have any military. Like you wouldn't have any ability to project
Yeah.
power. So that's a new thing, right? That's a new thing for Knights of Honor too.
That's a new thing, but please, all people that watch right now, not to take it for granted 100%. Currently, in the build, you can do this. Well, by the way, this is called part one, the dev diary, because
Right.
there's so much more to say about roll code and characters, so we just cannot possibly go super deep today. But right now, there are mechanics in the game. There are ways so you can make sure that your non-martial characters can also lead smaller but some armies.
Right.
But this might go. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, I know that right now it's already changed a little bit. Like at one point, there was a particular skill that allowed you to lead an army,
Yes, exactly.
and then we tried no skill and everyone can lead it. And I thought that was
Mm,
fun, but it also had some other implications and how
mm,
you would play with them. And so I
yeah.
think right now in the current build, we're back to having a couple
Mhm.
skills that do it. So
Yeah.
it's a good example of just how things are always changing when you're building a game like this and you're trying
Mm,
different things.
mm, exactly.
Yeah. So another thing that was mentioned in the dev diary is this idea of the king always being on the roll court, because I know from Knights of Honor 1 you had to kind of choose the king to be on the roll court to have a role.
Yes.
So why was that changed from the first game? What was the inspiration of the thought process there?
Several reasons, very, very practical, pragmatical actually. First, he's a king. He deserves to have a central place in your UI. And even if he's not doing something in particular right now, like he's not leading armies or trading or doing anything, he still has a king stuff to do. So that symbolizes the central position in the UI, symbolizes his kingly role. So when you select him, you have a lot of options for him to help your empire grow, basically, and keep
Right.
the order and so on.
And it was
And
sorry, go ahead, please.
no, please, sorry.
And I was gonna say, I know we aren't talking about too much of this yet, but as kind of a tease, there's also, I guess, like unique mechanics that we're putting around the king's role. Like if it has a different class, like for example, with marshals, they can lead larger armies. I think with the other classes have different unique mechanics that are implied. Is that's also an expanded thing from the first game? We're doing more effort there.
Yes, we put a lot more effort to work on every class and make it even if we have to go the extra mile and develop a bit more specific gameplay systems and interface for a particular class, just to emphasize his role and provide for interesting choices. For example, just one little example from the old game, the trader that was the guy who was trading and making some money. He was essentially obsolete by the mid game or end game because you didn't need him anymore. You grow big, you have a lot of comfort, financial comfort, and so we're looking at this time to really make all classes important, more or less, during the entire game, from early game, mid game, and late game when we are supposed to be very strong.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, some of these classes do have to kind of evolve in their functionality because they have certain purposes at one stage of the game, but then as you're progressing and maybe conquering more and growing in size or progressing, there's different aspects you can leverage of them to make it more fun. So we've kind of talked a little bit about the different classes, but why don't we actually go through each of them really fast? Just to give. Obviously, I think in later Dev Diaries we're going to deep dive into these classes one by one and talk about their different functionality. But some people don't. Maybe they're new to the Knights of Honor franchise, or people that knew Knights of Honor 1 and don't know how we're changing things for Knights of Honor 2. Maybe we can do a quick description of each one. So I believe we have 5 classes right now. We'll just go through them in order real quick. So first, why don't you tell us about the Marshal? Who is this Marshal class? What would a Marshal give you if you had that in your role court?
A strong army, supposedly. He's the typical, very tough, skilled, probably, and loyal, hopefully, army leader. So you need those guys to lead your armies. Of course, the king always can lead army himself, and it's even a special case where the army is much bigger. We wanted to capture this fantasy, like the king himself went to the battlefield. So there are ways for you to feel like something epic happens. But in other cases, you need those marshals. Maybe the king is busy at north, but then you need somebody to quench a rebellion deep south. So yeah, you need those guys.
Okay. So the marshal is really kind of that military class. Which I mean, that makes sense. The name
is
implies
purely military. Yes.
Awesome. So
but you can specialize him. You can specialize him through skills and stuff. So he could be really offensive conqueror who is really good in sieging, taking foreign territories, keeping them under control, because once you take it, you're not granted that you'll keep the control there and all that stuff. The other one could be, you can turn essentially in a sheriff or something like that, just riding very fast and dealing with people that don't like you at home.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, it's the exertion of your force out in the world, and that force is not always just combat. There's other elements of that, like kind of keeping control of a territory, or sometimes an unruly population. Makes complete sense. So the next class we have is the merchant, right? Tell us a little bit about the merchant.
Merchant is that fantasy here about a wealthy noble who has connections and who knows the world. Probably even could turn into an explorer and discover some interesting places like China or exotic markets and stuff like that. And but also being really clever and dealing well with managing things. He could be a wonderful steward. Also, he can help you so your people actually pay the taxes they are supposed to pay, because it's one thing to press a button and say taxes 15%. It's a completely different thing to have a guy that makes sure that people actually pay what they have to.
Right.
And if they don't, then you have the sheriff or this specialized marshal to take care for the order. So we see the merchants to have several roles in different stages of the game, and fighting inflation, corruption, importing goods, trading for goods, all that stuff.
Yeah, and there's other. I know there's we're not talking about them today, but there's also we actually dive into the merchant. It'll be fun because you'll get to hear about some of the different economic systems. There's a lot of new economic features and elements. A lot of them are still very volatile and changing right now in development, but some really cool ideas. I'm going to say one a quick phrase and not explain any of it, but the one tease with the idea of trade centers and what trade centers can mean in the world, and how merchants can interact with trade centers, and how you can interact with trade centers, or maybe even create your own. There's some really cool new ideas that are going to be coming up, and I think when we talk about the merchant, how they interact with the people, are going to be really excited about that. So the next one is the diplomat. So tell us about the diplomat. Who is the diplomat?
Diplomats. It's for our period, time period where the game starts. Those 3 periods actually, entry points. It's a little long stretch with the diplomat, because the diplomacy as we know it today, it actually started to emerge in much later in North Italy, or around this area, maybe 15th century or late 15th century. But the idea about having a diplomat was so capturing. So we said, okay, let's make it. Let's do this and just make it for fun. This is your biggest defense where you're not at war. You want to have a lot of friends and strong alliances, and you really want to take care that your big neighbor is not going to jump over you. So probably you need that guy to to help maintain and guard you and politically try to save you from being invaded and literally steamrolled by somebody very powerful. Also, if some relationships are not really working as you hope, and your gifts are not actually working, then probably you could send that guy to also do some work and improve the situation politically.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of I think the diplomacy feature has a lot of aspects to it, and one thing that I hope that people are kind of getting from these different descriptions that we're going through is that you can see how each of these royal court classes connect to these core features, like you said with the merchant. Instead of just clicking a button and changing something in the UI, maybe there's an opportunity to use the merchant to change those things and maybe change them differently. And with the diplomat, even tying into some of the royal family aspects of, you want to create a marriage alliance, and trying to do that without a diplomat there to kind of pave the way is much more difficult versus actually building a relationship, having your main man there, talking to the king, getting to know the royal family, and then being like, hey, we got a kid that I think would match up with your kid pretty well. I can be able to have that conversation, and the fantasy of it, at least, it just makes it feel more grounded. More immersive, so that's really cool.
One bad thing of the old game, I wouldn't say bad, but really probably a tedious thing, it was if you really wanted to marry your king or your son, the son of the king, then you literally had to open a map which wasn't presented in the best possible way. Then you had to go over and over every single kingdom and ask, would you marry? No. Would you marry? No. So now you can actually automate this. I hate this word because it doesn't sound very medieval, but you can get your diplomat and say, look, I need a wife. Can you please do something?
Just travel, right, okay. So
have some money, find me a wife.
Options out there, right. Here's some money.
It's helping the players in a way, but also in some immersive way. Like there is a real person. Better diplomat will succeed more easily.
I like it. It's cool. So the next class is the spy, and that's an easy one to kind of get from the name. But tell us a little bit about the spy. What's the spy about?
A short historical note. Pretty much everybody was a spy back then. Everybody. But again, as a diplomat, it's a nice cliche and it's a nice role, nice card to have in your deck, so to say. So there are changes compared to the previous game, where the previous game was the entire espionage was not really meant to be a multiplayer feature. It was working to a certain extent versus the AI. There were a lot of fun moments with espionage. They could be extremely powerful, the spies, and also extremely annoying for humans at some point, especially if you grow big. So now we have to rework the core of espionage, how it works, but keep the flavor and the joy. We compare it with fishing. Like diplomat, the good spy is a really great fishing pole. Then there is a little skill, well, not a little, to decide where to put your bait and what to do, where to send him, and let's see what fish you catch. So it's interesting stuff going on there, but there are big differences then compared to the old game.
Something that I know was brought up in the dev diary, and I know back when we first started working together, it was one of my very early feedback comments about the first Knights of Honor, which was this idea of, later on in Knights of Honor 1 games, you got to the point where pretty much every one of your royal court members was a spy, was a traitor, and you had to worry about them like flipping and doing everything. And I know that comment came up in the royal court thread. We don't have details on exactly how we're gonna change that behavior, because a lot of the espionage stuff, like Vesto kind of hinted at, is still an ongoing development conversation. But I can promise you, you're not going to be in that situation where every game kind of ends up in that same scenario where your entire royal court is all spies, and you basically just guarantee that's going to happen. That's an aspect that we're fixing from the first game. I know that got brought up.
There is a way for you to actually actively defend yourself versus that stuff. There is a big price to pay in terms of choice or opportunity. Remember, the king is in your court, so it's very important what your king class is and what his skills are. But potentially you can really say, okay, guys, your spies are just they don't apply in my kingdom,
right?
But you pay the cost for other stuff, which cool stuff that the king can do.
Right. Oh, someone changed a light there.
Is it worse?
Yeah, yeah. We should have them turn that back off. That was weird.
Maybe.
You look orange. You look like
Yeah.
you've been in the Florida sun too long or something.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, yeah, completely a good improvement in my opinion. I'm excited about that. I know that it was, especially with the marshals. You were sitting there with your marshals, and you were just like waiting. You're like, okay, well, sometime soon they're all going to betray me, and now it will be ways that not only can you combat that, but also just making that a little more of a fun experience than a guaranteed punishment down the road.
Army Revolt was fun.
Yeah, well, it was fun to a point, but man.
Yeah.
So the last one that we have, the last class is the cleric, right? So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the cleric and what's that all about.
So that's your interface to your religious world, basically. So if you're Catholic, then there is Pope and some interactions with it. Also, if you're Orthodox kingdom, then there are another mechanics related to this.
I'm laughing because someone in the chat was like, it was fun to watch, like when the whole royal court switched over.
Right,
like if you're watching that happen to someone else, you're like, you have 7 marshals all betraying you all at once. But man, when it happens to you, you're just like, oh no, those are all my armies, and now they're fighting me. So yeah, maybe you just need that as kind of like a watch mode, and you can just see all these super crazy things happen. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just thought that comment was funny.
No, it's right. I thought I told the story about Army Revolt with a little sarcasm here, but probably wasn't enough. Yeah, I didn't like it when my armies revolted and awful.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Back to the cleric. I just okay. I love those stories. Yeah. They're fun.
So he is, of course, the guys about knowledge, religion, that stuff, and making people content in a way, and interfacing you with the religious features in the game, which we'll talk later.
Yeah.
At some other moment. And that's in a nutshell. You can play without any class, by the way. So, but as diplomats, you are a defensive political force. They are really their role is defense. The spies, they are offensive character. Their idea is to harm. The clerics, their top level idea is to preserve the knowledge, work with skills,
right,
books and all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
It's interesting. And I think we're gonna do a little bit of a story time in one of these segments coming up. But there's I'm already seeing people post with one guy, Kektakor, I think is his name. Now we're gonna have the Brad can't pronounce names game, which is always fun. But he said, I remember I lost 8 marshals and 38 provinces in Central Europe after a king assassination in the first game. Like just oh my gosh, break down and have to recover. It would be actually this may maybe not a dev stream like our normal dev streams, but I'd be very interested if a lot of you on the stream would post your stories on the forums, community.knightsofhonor.com. I'd love to capture a whole bunch of these memories that people have. They're fun moments from the first game. Which ones really like kind of stick out in their mind, and we could actually do almost like a story time dev stream where we come here and we read different stories from the first game, and maybe we can tell some of our memories, and we could share some of the developer stories from the current game, places where things have been broken in fun different ways. It'd be fun just to talk about different ways that people have played Knights of Honor and where they get the enjoyment of it. That would be a fun thing. So if people in the straight chat have some awesome memories or some awesome stories, please go to community.knightsofhonor.com. Type up your cool story, maybe create a fun thread about it, and it'd be something for us to maybe have a part of a stream where we read a couple of those choice stories and future streams. That'd be a lot of fun. If you guys are up for that, I really enjoy that. I know Veso probably would.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So so now we've talked through the 5 classes. We have the marshal, the merchant, the diplomat, the spy, and the cleric. Were all of these classes in the previous game, or are some of these new?
No, diplomats are new, and there are some which were in the other game, in the old game, which are gone for good. We had 2 classes called farmer and builder, which didn't work at all. They had so limited usage and only early game, and they were not fun. They were just they were not fun to the point where you ask yourself why they existed at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what life is. So they are gone now, and their little roles they had, very tiny roles, they're scattered around, represented through skills and stuff like that for other classes. And now everybody can govern a province and stuff like that. But I just very quickly I want to add something else. There are more characters that can actually be in your court this time, including rebels, for example. You can there is a way so you end up with some rebels in your court, or
Okay.
everybody knows about the Pope and patriarchs, and even the ecumenical patriarch also can end up in your court and all that stuff. So,
okay,
crusaders and whatnot.
Right. So the two classes you mentioned that are not there from Knights of Honor 1, that's the builder and the farmer. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But we're you know we removed them because they didn't have enough functionality to keep them going. But we also added a lot more depth into the new classes that we have. So there's gonna be more functionality than you had before for each of the other ones.
Yeah. And also, farmer in my roll call doesn't sound very medieval, not really epic.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, Gogo, можеш да отвориш малко шторите?
So with the you mentioned something while you were talking about the previous classes and whatnot. You mentioned about the whole governing idea, and so being able to govern provinces is not new, but it's very different now. And then all of your world court members can govern province, and it's a very different functionality set now. So is governing important? Is it an important aspect of the game where you want to have these different governors for provinces?
Yes, it's quite important. You're supposed to choose territory for pretty much everybody in your court and give them some lands to rule in behalf of the king himself. So that those lands, we call that royal lands, actually. While all the rest of your empire is not exactly yours. Well, it's yours, but you know, somewhat limited in a certain way. Won't get into very deep details here. And also, depending who do you choose to be the governor, you have different aspects of your game changed also, or different sets like cultural or religious or military and stuff like that. Unlike the old game governing was there was governing, but it was kind of stunning your character in a town, like locking him in a town. So you get your cleric, you put him in a town, and then he cannot do anything else. Or spy, for example. I don't think the spies could govern back then, but anyway, now everybody could have a kind of rulership of a certain province, which does not lock them to that province. They could do their job, they could travel and make stuff.
Okay.
In the meantime,
so there's a lot that being the governorship of the game gives you a lot of different things when it comes to like changing the benefits of a province, maybe, or amplifying them.
Yes.
And maybe even changing those amplifications based on what class you are, maybe even what skills you have. Like your skills may impact that as well.
Yes, they do. And not even the province, the entire region. Which we'll talk about later.
The entire region. See, you gotta be careful. Veso may leak some fun functionality into this stream if we're not careful. That's fine though. I love it. I like people theory crafting on some of the different words that we use. If they're clever, they may start picking up on maybe some new features and functionality that we're going to be adding to the Knights of Honor 2 game. So really cool. So it seems like the Royal Court really has a lot to do with adding variety into the game and like playing as you want and having these different dynamics and aspects to it. From governing a certain town and what that means to the actions they can take and how it ties to different features. So I have to imagine, we were even sharing them already, there's probably a lot of really cool stories that come up even during development about how these different features and functionalities evolve. So do you have maybe a couple of cool stories? And obviously they're going to be stories usually of brokenness because we're in development and things are all sorts of wacky. But do you have some cool stories maybe you can share about how you've seen the Royal Court do some fun stuff in Knights of Honor 2 so far?
Well, I do. But I think your last recent story was.
Oh,
I laughed so much.
You can't pass the buck to me right away. You gotta start. Are you want me to start? I'll start. I'll buy you some time for your story. Okay. So this actually just happened. God, it was in the most recent milestone build, and we had just changed quite a bit of the spy aspects. There were different things we were doing with the spy stuff, and I was using my king. My king had gotten my first king, and he had gotten to be a marshal by that was his class when he started. So he was running around and at war with. So I was playing. I think I was playing Spain, and I was fighting. Who's north of me in that map? I can't remember who I was fighting north of me. Who?
France or Navarra?
It wasn't France. Oh, you know, it was Navarra. It wasn't France yet. I ended up fighting France. No, it was France. It actually was France. I conquered Navarra, then I was going after France. That's right.
It was Navarra, but seems like France.
Yeah. So I was fighting the French, and my king, because of just I underestimated the because again, fun balance. I underestimated the power differential between the kind of tier 2, tier 3 units like the heavy cavalry and whatnot, and just the guy's army of he had 2 armies of just like the peasant, the peasant soldiers or whatever. And so I lost this fight, which I was not expecting. And my king gets captured. So he gets captured and thrown in jail. And I'm like, well, that's not good. I was leveraging him to be my big army guy. And now my king's in jail. And they wanted I had the money, but it was more the principle of the thing. I didn't want to give them the money to rescue my king. So I'm like, you know what? Spy time. I want to play the spy game. So I hired a spy, started leveling him up, and then I sent him over with the idea of trying to jailbreak my king. There's an action the spy has right now in the game where you can, if you have a certain level of skills or a certain strength of a spy, you can attempt to help break someone out of the jail. And so I'd gotten him over there, and I'd attempted my first jailbreak. It failed horribly. My spy was caught, but he was able to escape, so he ran away. And I'm like, oh, okay, that sucked, so I need to try this again. So I sent my spy back to France to try to rescue my king a second time. And the moment the spy deployed, like there was a bar that fills up, the moment he deployed, I get this pop-up saying, as soon as your spy sets foot in the enemy territory, they recognize him and capture him right away, which I didn't even know that was a thing. Like I didn't realize that if your spy almost got caught but escaped, if you come back, it makes sense. They recognize him. So I recognized the dude and threw him in jail. And so now my king and my spy are in jail. And I'm like, well, this sucks. So I had to get a second spy and attempt to go get the king out and my other spy out. So now this is like turned into this whole mission of absurdity where I'm like, crap, I have like 2 spies or 1 spy in jail with my king who's also in jail. I imagine them like sitting in the cell and the king's like, hey, weren't you supposed to break me out of here? And the guy's like, yeah, well, that didn't work out. But don't worry, Joe, the second spy is coming. And so I leveled the second spy up and sent him in to France to try to do another jailbreak. And he's leveling up and he's getting ready to do the jailbreak. And he attempts to do that. And then this guy gets caught. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Both of the spies that I've tried to do, and obviously as a debug, I can see the % chance to try it, but I was like, oh, whatever, I'm gonna try it anyways. So now I have my king and the 2 spies sitting there in the jail cell all together, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. But I got this option with one of the spies' levels that I didn't realize. Sorry, I should take a step back. The first spy that was attempting the jailbreak for the king got an action, I think, because of a level up to attempt escaping just by himself, and he succeeded. So one of my 2 spies ended up getting out after the second one got caught. But when he got out, I couldn't bring him back because if I bring him back, then he get captured again. So that's not going to work. So now I have a spy that I can't use back in my court. I have the second spy who was trying to free the king the second time caught, and the king caught. What I didn't know is my second spy also had a skill that allowed him to incite a prison riot. Yeah. And I'd never done that before. And I'm like, what the hell is prison riot? So I'm like, all right, I'll try this thing. And so I did a prison riot, and it succeeded. And I get this pop-up that's like, you have incited this massive riot, and all of your guys have now gotten out. And I'm like, holy crap, that worked. And so I got like my spy back, my first spy back escaped on his own, and my king is now back. So this entire thing of me, like, I had to do a whole bunch of other nonsense too, because I had to level these spies up to get these skills. And so I'm sitting there and like getting stuff in order to level them up, and then all that before I even tried it. It was this whole like, no, there wasn't a third spy. I was able to pull it off with, well, funny enough, I did hire a third spy because I thought I was going to need him. So I'm like, well, I've failed twice now. I'm not at this point, I'm all in. Like, I'm not paying to free this king. I'm going to find a way to get him out with espionage. And so I did hire a third spy and started leveling him up. But then that prison riot thing, which I still don't know which skill let me do that. I wish the first spy had that skill, but that skill let everyone get out, and it was just fine. It was a good like hour or so of me just trying to figure out, how there's this evolving situation that's partially the game and partially me not my own stupidity, to a certain degree my own stupidity, but me just learning the mechanics a little bit. And I remember, like, I was so mad when I sent the spy back. He had almost gotten caught. The first dude, he'd almost gotten caught, and he's like, your spy almost got caught, but he escaped by the skin of his teeth. He's got out. And I'm like, all right, sweet, send him back. And when that pop-up came up, it was like, of course, like, the dude almost got caught. You can't just send him right back. They're gonna be like, hey man, we don't let you go last time, but they're gonna pretend that they didn't know who the guy was. Like, of course they caught him immediately when he walked in the door. And like, when the pop-up happened, I'm going, yeah, all right, like, that's fair, right? Like, if Thomas the spy had just gotten away and then he just walks right back in the door with a different hat on, and they're like, it's like the I'm just kidding, I'm distracted, but it's like those old cops and robber type movies where like the guy just puts on, or it's like the Clark Kent kind of thing, where it's like you put on glasses and all of a sudden you can't recognize the dude. It's like I imagine my spy like trouncing back in, but this time he has a pair of glasses on, and they're like, we know it's you. Time to go back to jail. And it's like, no, it's not me. Come on, it's just not. It doesn't work that way. Oh my god, it was absolutely ridiculous. So I know I got excited, but that story was nuts. And I see some people talking. It was a lot of fun. Like, it's stuff like that from that just kind of come up with some of these different features, and like talking about the deck building, like building your own royal court, that just brings this game to life. And you have these moments that happen, and sometimes they're moments of the game, and sometimes they're moments of your own. You get yourself in circumstances, and then you got to try to figure out how to use the mechanics to resolve them, or just be like, nah, forget it. You didn't work out, spy. You're now going to be in jail forever. I don't care about you. Like, you have different fantasies that you can play with those game features, and I love it. It's part of the immersiveness and the excitement of it.
Yeah. Well, there is one thing, if we have a little more time, just to mention something
quick
very quickly
before we go to questions.
It wouldn't be a story, because I really wanted to say something important. Knights of Honor is a strategy game. It's not an RPG game, but we are trying here to somehow make people able to come up with their own stories about characters and have their fantasy kind of fulfilled in one way or another. So if they imagine something, then the game to allow them to live their fantasy. But it's not a role-playing game, so it's very tricky balance how much depth we put into characters, how light-hearted we take everything. In the old game, we were, I think, quite happy with how light-hearted it was. It wasn't really dark, serious, heavy or something, but allowed for those stories. And your story, I really love it. I cannot compete with that. I mean,
I get myself into situations, Vesso, when I play this game. I mean, when I play most games, I get myself into circumstances. But
my story from today, all Europe pagan. How it happened? Why? I had no idea. I will have to debug tomorrow, probably.
The whole world just turned pagan, like over just
whole
gradually.
World, completely.
Oh man, it's like
everybody praise the sun.
All right. Yeah, and imagine you're like the one lone Catholic territory with like your cleric being like, "Well, all you heathens, like, why are you all worshiping the sun? What happened? Where'd the Pope go?" Like, he's just like completely aghast at the. Yeah, it's funny. Oh man.
Insane.
Yeah, someone was commenting. You're right with the spy story. we definitely did, and allude to some of the different new mechanics that are in the game. It's something that we're going to talk about some of these in detail when we go through the different role corp members and classes and feature sets. Some of it we want you to discover, so you're not going to get details for everything. We're going to give you opportunities when the game comes out, and you actually play it yourself, to have those surprise moments where you're like, oh wow, that's really cool. And to be frank, and you've gotten this from watching all these dev diaries or reading all the dev diaries and some of the dev streams, there's a lot that's changing right now. So some skills that you may hear a story about, they may not be there. They may function differently. There's a lot of I use the word volatility, not in a negative way, but just things are changing rapidly as we're refining, finding the fun. That's a phrase that we use in game developer land a lot. Finding the fun in the game can be a lot of different things. It's weird because sometimes something, I know I mentioned this in the previous stream, something that sounds fun as a concept, and when you first start messing with it, when you play with it for a while, can kind of break the game or ruin the fun in other aspects of the game, as opposed to kind of making the fun more even across all the different feature sets and whatnot. So expect that you're gonna hear a lot of these cool things as part of being in this dev stream journey with us, that you get to hear tastes of things that we're working on, see how this development goes. You're probably going to see things changing as we talk about them, and that's exciting. I mean, I hope that you enjoy learning from us and understanding a little bit more about what goes in all the Vesso is a well, actually, you do cook too. I was going to use the cooking analogy, but you're a chef mixing ingredients. Sometimes you taste it, and you're like, no, it needs more of this or less of that. It's part of that process. So
yeah.
Now let's go into questions. I know we have about 10-15 minutes left, and we have quite a few questions to ask. I have a collection of questions from the stream, and I have a couple that are from the community site. Again, that's community.knightsofhonor.com. We hope you join us and tell us some of your stories. If you add questions in there on the dev diaries and they come up, we will do our best to answer a couple of them. So the first question, I know you answered it a little bit, or you hinted at a little bit of this in the forums when you responded, Vesso, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. So Ivory Knight asks, clearly there is a lot more to be said about the abilities these royal court knights will have. So I won't ask any questions about that. But in the first game, one could spend books to increase the court members' levels. Is there something, is there a similar boosting that we get in Knights of Honor 2, or do court members have personal leveling over time? I know it's a big question to ask, but maybe you can give a little bit of information about that response.
Both things exist in different ways. I know I'm not answering anything right now. Apologize. Please give us a bit more time, and in some of the next diaries, you'll know more about it. It's not that simple as it was in the previous game, but also remember, I told you it's not an RPG game, so there is it's a unique way of presenting and depicting people in a grand strategy game without. I'll shut up now.
So I'll to add a little bit of commentary there.
Yeah.
And this is, I just got done saying this is a great question that ties into what I was just talking about. Literally right now, and I'm not exaggerating. I think I'm going to be playing the build later this week. Vesso and the team are revamping the whole way skills work. And they are revamping how the role court levels up. So we've had, I think this is version 3 of how knights level up, and how there was a version where the cleric would write books and you'd have to read the books in order to get skills. And we tried that for a little while, but it was a little bit weird. That may come back in some permutation, we don't know. Then there was a version where like your whole kingdom would level up and you could grant levels. Like, there's different ideas we're trying. And I'm just teasing at little shards of what those ideas are to help you guys get the sense that, we're still experimenting with some of these features to figure out what's the best way to do it. I think Ivory Knight, the most accurate way to answer your question right now is kind of what Vesso said, which is that we're looking at this to try to add more depth into it than the first game. So it's more exciting. It's more active. You have both a role in the decisions that you make, as well as the actions that you take, and how that enhances the abilities and functionalities of your role court. But it's something that still we can't talk about quite yet because we're still working on it. And I'll also say that, to emphasize what Vesso said, we're trying to tune this so that you do have some of that attachment and growth progression that you craft without taking it too far into that feeling like each of these characters are RPGs, and that's a balancing act that we're also experimenting with. So hopefully that gives you a wide answer for what's for us an active question that we're currently exploring. So the next question we have from the forums is Antistar asked, it's more of a statement, but there's a question in here. He said that there's that one notice where the king has no heir, meaning that I will lose one of my marshals was so bad that almost my main concern was for the king to always have a child. What he's implying is, well, I'll talk about the end. So he said, I hope that Knights of Honor 2 will have at least that much attention to details in the game, if not more. And I think there's a kind of a hidden question here and a statement, which is he liked that there was all these things that could happen that you had to react to. There was also some of them were very punishing, and that could be almost too far. So, you know, specifically about and I know we talked about this in the announce, like that king dying and having not an heir and all this wacky stuff happening, and like that's something we're actually actively looking to improve from the first game, correct?
Yeah, of course. We are going to keep the possibility for problems to happen. Otherwise, it's not very interesting. But right, at least you will have a little more choice. You have a little more choice and what you're doing, and you have a little more control over through skills and stuff, how your raw family develops. So it's not that dramatic, but can be. There are moments where it could be, and I think it's very logical. The other thing is, which is a very, very different story, is what happens during rebellions. Is it so instant? One of the things in the old game was that outcome of this major problem, huge kingdom without a heir, it definitely happened instantly. The outcome was pretty instant. Now it's not that instant. It's still very large, impactful, but not in a blink of an eye.
Right, and I think that was you know, something that we talked about again very early on, which is, you know, still keeping those situations, those emergent moments in the game that in a way are you know can be very, very fun without making them instantly punishing and in a weird way removing choice. And I think that was the, you know, one of the challenges with some of those circumstances where you'd be in a situation where it's like, man, I don't have any option here. The game is trapping me in a situation where I have to deal with this catastrophic moment, and I feel like I'm almost like handcuffed to what's going on, as opposed to, hey, there's this moment developing, and now I can do different things. It creates, like the spy story, a king dying without an heir creates a fun moment that you can try different things and try to resolve it, as opposed to, oh no, now I just lost my most powerful marshal with his entire army. I had no opportunity to even do anything about that, and now I have to always think about that potential risk, which changes things. So we've talked a lot about that, and I think Vesso answered it very well. You know, how do we help create those choices, and like you said, make those moments happen progressively so you can react and have fun throwing additional spies at the problem, you know, or whatever it may be, like trying to use your court to evolve it. So let's take a couple questions from the chat here. For my Alex behind the scenes, do you have any names for who asked these questions? If you can maybe pop a couple of those in there, that'd be awesome. So I want to be able to give credit to who these are. So one question I'm going to just say randomly. Someone said, how exactly will the fish be implemented in the game? So we may have caused ourselves a circumstance where we showed this flying fish video, and there'll be a certain subset of the community that's going to remember and ask us where the fish is going to come from and how we're going to get this thing. So sorry, Vesso. It could live on beyond just this one little video. So while we're waiting for the names of the people, let's see if I can ask, and I apologize, we'll get those names here in a second. So we have the, will the look of the buildings change as you build improvements? I'm not sure who asked that one, but is that something where, you know, you'll see a visual representation of some of your province development actions in the world?
Yes, of some. Yes, not of all of them, but of some. But there are many things you can build in a province. So some iconic things we try to represent. Well, now when I said iconic, this could mislead some people. Short answer is yes. There are certain things which you can see. For example, you can have a lot of grain fields, and if you build some windmills, then you'll see some windmills rotating and looking very cute on the map. Just an example.
Very, very cute windmills. Always cute windmills.
Cute windmills.
It looks like that was a username Pond that asked that question, which is awesome. So we also have a question from Kitakor, which is the town building system being reworked? Are we changing the way that functions?
To big extent, yes. Yeah. There are some similarities, but the overall thingy is different.
Yeah, I know that we're not talking quite how the province development is working yet, but the Vess is 100% right. It's going to be familiar, so you'll know what you're doing. It's not going to be where you're going to be confused and like, oh goodness, how does this work? But there's a lot of new aspects to it, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So we have another question. Gosh, I wish I had like the Microsoft Sam like pronunciation thing, so I wouldn't have to try to slaughter these names. But here we go. It's Kartachka, Kartacha, Kartacha. I hope I did that reasonably well. Will customizing maps / scenarios be something that the game will offer?
I wouldn't answer this right now. First of all, it might mean different things. Modding,
right,
or what? Or in-game rules, yes. How many? Much more than, well, I wouldn't say much, but more, definitely more than what we had before. Yeah. So customization, yes. The game is multiplayer. There are a lot of multiplayer options for the people to kind of craft their fun, so to say.
Yeah. I know that it's a question that the reason why I asked it is it's come up multiple times. I think it's a good thing to just kind of throw out there, in that we're going to offer opportunities for you to modify the settings of the game. What those modification opportunities are going to be is something we're still refining, but there's, like Vesso mentioned, there's going to be more than there was in the previous game. There may be, this is not something we've decided yet, but there may be opportunities for us to do some scenario type things. I think that what we've discussed, and this is an ongoing discussion, was instead of having like crafted scenarios where it's like, go solve this thing, there's more options where you can create scenarios out of those different options that you can then drop yourself into that world and play. But it's an evolving set of features, and it'll be something we probably talk about a lot later. And then Vesto mentioned this, and I know we've talked about this a number of times. You guys will have lots of power with mods. So guys who like to tinker and get into the nitty gritty, if you want to modify the game to create these cool custom scenarios, if you want to create the Game of Thrones map and build this setting where you start in a specific place and have to go deal with that, there's a lot of things that you can do with mods to create those types of things for you. So I know that modding was a really big part of Knights of Honor 1, and a lot of people have talked about the awesome mods they played. I know that one of the ones that I paid attention to back in the day was the one where you had the whole world, and like the mechanics didn't quite work in that scenario because the map was so freaking big, but it was still fun, like having this massive map that you could run around in. So there's some cool opportunities there for players to get into those modding tools, and we're going to be releasing them. That's really exciting. So I'm going to take one more question. I know our time's almost up. Let me make sure I pick a good one here. You know what? I'm going to ask a question I think I saw them asked many times, which is, and I'm going to answer this with myself, Fesso. Z-Stress, and I think like 7 other people asked during this stream and every other stream, is there any release year announced for Knights of Honor 2? The answer is we haven't announced any kind of release window yet. As you're getting the implication, it's very much in development, and there's a lot of things that are still changing, and we really want to give this game the time that it deserves so that we can have the best sequel. I don't even call it sequel, the best next installment of the Knights of Honor franchise that we can. So it's an experience that of game development where you do your best to create schedules and kind of know how development's going to go, and then you're watching the game being built, and sometimes it goes to on that plan and sometimes it doesn't, and we don't want to hatch the egg before it's ready to be hatched. So as we get further on and things start getting more clear, we'll announce when that window is going to be. I will say this, and I know we mentioned this in the announcement, some of you are familiar with this. We are planning to do some type of beta. We don't know if that's going to be open or closed or invite only. There's still some refinements there, but expect that when we're getting closer to release, we're going to have some segment of the community joining us to play the game, to give us feedback. And that will also be a window of time where, depending on how that feedback goes, we're going to be responding and iterating and fixing and refining. So, we're doing our best to create the highest opportunity for success for this game, so that you guys can have the best game that we can. It's not all of us, including, I know that you heard my stories, Meso and myself, we all want this game to have that awesome, fun, immersive experience that we've been hinting at. And as soon as we get to the point where we feel like we have a date, then we'll start talking to you about it. So, Veso, any parting thoughts before we sign off?
Well, it was wonderful speech. Thank you for organizing everything, people. It was really nice.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
I'm happy we're at this stage right now where essentially the technicals and the internal goods is pretty much done and in a good shape of the game. People are playing multiplayer in the office and sometimes for fun, which is a very good sign.
Just gotta watch out for those.
Now we are
the merchant camp, the
mercenaries.
The mercenary camps.
Yeah,
right?
I know you love. That's fixed now. They cannot spawn instantly.
Well, didn't Michael? Sorry, now Veso and I are having a side conversation. Didn't Michael say he was going to make it so it's fixed for everyone except for when I play? And there's a special, like, if Brad then spawn mercenary camp on everyone's.
He was joking.
Really quick, I'm going to tell the story really quick. I know we're running long, but I think you guys will like this. There was a very first multiplayer game I played, and it was in their offices out in Sofia, and we were playing a game with a couple other Knights of Honor 1 vets that were playing for the first time. We had a couple of us there. And
a couple of months ago, I think. Or
yeah, it was long ago, like 6 months. It was in the summertime, I think. And one of the guys was a very experienced strategy gamer like myself, and I had played a lot of Knights of Honor 2 at this point. I'd known the mechanics, and so I kind of knew the build sequence to rush up to the highest tier army. And so when I figured they didn't know the game as well as I did. So when we first started, I rushed up the tech tree. I rushed up the progression tree to get the most powerful units and build a max army. And then I was going to walk in and start crushing them. And so I'm like sprinting up this tree. Everything is going to maximizing my economy so I can build these buildings. I had the timers down. And just as I'm building I had finally got all the buildings done. I had an empty army basically with no units in it. I was building my very first tier 3 or whatever, like heavy archer and heavy cavalry, whatever unit. This dude walks up with an army that has like 5 tier 3 units in it. And I'm going, what? And he attacks one of my provinces. And I'm going, how? Like, there's no way. There's no way in the world that he has those units yet. It's impossible. Like, I literally have been going as fast as you could go up this tree. How in the world does he have like 5 or 6 of them? You can't ramp your economy that fast and build all these buildings. Just how? So he absolutely takes, like, it destroys me. Like, I get decimated. I lose 2 provinces, so my economy starts collapsing. So I can't even build a full stack army, and he's just rushing through, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what the heck? And so I took my headphones off, and I'm like, dude, like, I'm not gonna say his name, but like, how in the world did you do this? And he's like, well, I mean, a mercenary camp just dropped right in front of my capital. And so I just rushed all of my money and went out and bought every unit the mercenary camp had. And then I'm going, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you've got to be kidding me. Turn 1, like, not turn, but like moment 1, he gets a mercenary camp next to his capital, and they have all these, they're expensive, but they're all cheaper than all the cost it takes to build the buildings and build the units. So he was able to ramp his economy flat, buy all those mercenary units, and then walk his overstacked army right into my helpless, provinces. And I lost and was very mad that I lost my first multiplayer. I wanted that multiplayer win. So Michael, the programmer, he gave me grief for a long time, many times, about how I was complaining about the mercenary camps. Like, we have to remove the mercenary camps from the game because Brad doesn't like them, because there's that one multiplayer game where mercenary camps made him lose. And I hear they've fixed that bug. They fixed the bug where they can spawn at the very beginning with high tier units. But Michael was also threatening to have a special detector where it would know if it was my login playing the game, and every time I played multiplayer, spawn mercenary camps for all of my my enemies. So,
but now we have, because of that, a cool multiplayer mode named after this scenario, Peasant Rush, kind of blobbing scenario. Oh, oops, almost.
Yeah. Oh, man. Anyways, that I threw one last story out there for the fans. So thank you everyone so much for joining the DevStream. We hope you had a great time on DevStream number 3, talking about the Royal Court. We'll have another DevStream, probably another 3-ish weeks. We'll go into part 2, hopefully, of the Royal Court, and we'll have another topic, narrowing down the funnel a little bit, talking a little bit more in detail. In the meantime, please join the website, community.knightsofhonor.com. We'd love to have you join the community. Talk to us, share some of your stories from Knights of Honor, maybe even some of the stories you'd like to see in the game, so we can get different ideas and inspirations on how we can grow all of this and make the best game possible. Also, we have a Discord channel you can join, a very active community there. We have Facebook, all that good stuff. This video is going to be available on Twitch pretty much right away, so if you want to watch the recording, you can, and then we're going to be uploading it to our YouTube channel as well. If you want to see the previous dev streams or you missed one of them, you can find those on YouTube and Twitch. So feel free to go and listen to some of the previous streams and take this journey with us. I hope you had a good time, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. We really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Thank you.
Sire, there is movement within the French encampments. Our people grow uneasy.
The people have bigger problems. Our coffers threaten to become bare.
You talk of war and gold when it is our faith that matters.
Faith? How can the Pope expect troops for his crusade when
My lords,
our borders are in danger?
More subtle ways to deal with the French.
Intrigue is irrelevant if our borders are attacked.
Your call for
Cloak and
honesty
dagger.
Sit behind you.
How can our
Byzantine
people
My
risk
spies,
their souls?
we must
You're
raise our
right.
arms and defend our...
Enough! I've made my decision. Squire, fetch my armor!